Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, Alex, and with me I have Mike. How are you, Mike?
Hey, Alex. Yeah, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. A bit of a mixed week for City to recap with this one. And then also a bit of a topsy-turvy roller coaster sort of experience at the moment with the managerial search. So we'll get into that a bit later as well. But look, may as well jump right into our first positive result in about 5 or 6 games, I think, with the win over Wigan last midweek on the Thursday morning. It all seemed pretty positive after that or during that, really, because we had Pedro Martin sitting in the stands. We had a come from behind victory over Wigan. Oscar getting back on the score sheet to maintain his spot at the top of the championship scoring charts. And it's all unraveled a bit since then. But we'll focus on the positives first. How did you find that win against Wigan?
I was stoked for Dawson. I think he really needed that. I think we all needed it. Obviously, we'll speak about the performance, but overall, I think we did all right. I think there are still a few things that we need to work on, which were evident in the Huddersfield game. But yeah, as you said, it was good to see Oscar getting back on the score sheet. And I think when that game finished, we were all riding the high, just to come crashing back down to reality for a little bit. And we'll speak about the managerial questions plaguing the club at the moment, and the fact that you mentioned that Pedro Martins isn't in the box watching the game is mind blowing given the statements that came out after the game.
Yeah, 100%. It's sort of a microcosm of our season. It's the excitement and the optimism and the hope, and then the hope just killing you by 1,000 cuts with all manner of aspects to it. I guess the other positive as well. So we'll go into the performance now. Then I guess going 1-0 down. Will Keane, of course, scoring against City, couldn't score a goal while he was with us, and of course gets on the score sheet on his return against us. But then sort of the positive manner of the response, Pelkas getting his first goal for the club at the back post. I don't know if you saw, I think it was Ajun shared the Instagram videos of Pelkas scoring his first goal for us and his first goal for, Fenerbahce was where he came from. And they were really, really similar goals. They're both sort of back post headers, which I thought was quite neat. And then, we touched on Oscar as well getting the goal. But positive to see Pelkas on the score sheet. Cynic getting a start as well, looked pretty sharp as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned Will Keane scoring. It was almost a given.
Yeah.
But I think there was a stat that he'd scored 49 goals since leaving us. And he barely scored for us. I think he maybe got one or two.
Yeah, I think he scored against like Burton or someone.
Yeah,
it's the only one I think. Yeah,
the bag 49 after leaving us. I mean, credit to him. The goal itself, it was a good header, but Asgard shouldn't have had that much time. I think Cynic. I think it's Cynic and Pelkas just stand there while he just runs straight through, and has too much time to pick out Keane. But yeah, look, Pelkas making that run to the back post, beautiful run. I think Coyle's ball can't be ignored. It was an incredible pick out because you could see him looking towards that back post. And our deliveries from corners overall on the game looked really good. I thought we were going to score from a corner, and I mean we did. Elder had a delivery to Jones just before the halftime break as well that brought a save from the keeper. So it was a better display from set pieces. Defending them still a concern, and again that happened at Huddersfield.
Yeah.
It was a very nice and fluid attacking performance, I think is probably the best way to describe that.
Yeah, I'm surprised a little bit. And I mean, it was to a lesser extent against Huddersfield. We only had, I think, the one shot on target against them. But I was surprised at how much more confident we've looked going forward in these past 2 games than we had previously. And I guess once we were down against Huddersfield, we went into our shells a bit. But we'll talk about that game more in detail later. But in this game as well, even going behind, it didn't feel as if we sort of gave up on the game. And I suppose getting back into it reasonably soon after the opener from Wigan probably helped that. But as you say, I think the delivery from set pieces was a whole lot better. And yeah, it's the concern is, I mean, with the Keane goal as well, it's the marking, and again, it's set pieces, it's the marking and defense, and I just I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if it's something that you could just say, well, we'll bring in a new manager and he'll just click his fingers and these players will suddenly know where to go and what to do. It just feels like whether it's, we wanted Figueiredo to be the one to come in and be that experienced body to sort of teach these younger players where to stand, what to do, how to defend, and he's basically the biggest culprit, and that's why he's now out of the side. But I just don't know what the answer is.
If I knew, I'd be making a lot
Give
of
him a
money right
call.
now.
Yeah, that's right.
I think it's really hard because, as you said, appointing a new manager is not the solution to how we're defending. I think appointing a manager is more of a long term play as to the direction and role that we play as a club. The defending itself, it just seems like we're a second slower to every second ball, and maybe our defense is kind of complacent. I think you said Figueiredo was meant to be the elder one to just come in and tell us where to be positioned, but I think we've also dismissed him pretty quick. I think him being on the subs for now is probably a good thing because he knows that he has to put in more effort, and the performances that he was providing, and they're just not good enough for our club.
Yeah.
So I think he'll probably come back from this once he gets his next chance and be that strong defender we need. But I don't know where the solution is. I definitely think set pieces and set piece marking and training is definitely the first place to start. In terms
Yeah.
of overplay, I have no solution.
Yeah. And I guess other positives though, Tufan playing in that deeper role with, I guess it was Pelkas who was probably more in that number 10 role, looked quite good. I thought when we first recruited him, that was sort of the role he was going to play, was that deeper role. And then clearly with Traore and others getting injured, he's played that more advanced role to sort of step into that hole. But I thought he looked quite assured in that role. He was putting a lot of effort in. I think he's an easy target when we're losing games or when we're not playing particularly well. That it's a really lazy, ironically, it's a really lazy criticism of the side to just look at Tufan and say, oh, he's lazy, he's not putting the effort in. But I think certainly in this game and even Huddersfield, I thought he played reasonably well. I don't think you could really complain too much about his effort these past two games. Certainly, I think it's a much better performance than I think it might have been the Swansea or the Stoke fixtures where he looked quite poor. So I thought that was a big positive as well.
Yeah, and I keep seeing people continue to comment on his weight, and I just don't think it's fair. Is that he might naturally be a bit of a stockier player, which is fine, but I think when he's got the ball and when he's in that kind of, it's not really a CDM role, it's more like a centre mid
Yeah,
role.
yeah,
Which, I mean, Doherty definitely plays that a bit better, with a bit more energy. But I think for what Tufan brings is completely different to what like Doherty would bring. And I think Tufan brings a bit of composure and creativity, maybe less running back and
yeah.
forth. He's got the ball. I think most of the time we can be assured he's going to do something with it or pick someone out. And I think that was on display against Wigan.
And I think that's it. I think, and talking about Doherty as well, who I thought was really good off the bench. Doherty is more a ball carrier, whereas Tufan will more spray a pass and hit a target quite well. So Doherty's, yeah, definitely got more energy, but as you say, they're different sorts of players. But yeah, Doherty I thought was also really positive in this game.
I feel like Doherty is your typical box-to-box midfielder. Just a lot of energy, a lot of power. Also, as we saw against Huds, has a shot,
Yeah.
and can really test the keeper. And I think he's just starting to build confidence now. And I mean, when we'll get to Hudson, we'll talk about it. But I think he came off the bench and gave us the energy that we needed to see it off. I think the last 5 to 10 minutes were still a bit shaky, and luckily we have Baxter as a goalkeeper. But it was, I think, at any game when you're up 2-1, the last 5 to 10 minutes are really crucial, and for us to hang on was really important.
Yeah, I was just going to say as well. Yeah, that Baxter save right at the end to sort of secure the 3 points. It reminded me a little bit of the Norwich fixture where we got quite lucky, probably in the Norwich game with the Ramsey miss over the bar fortunate in this game more so because it was a really good save from Baxter. But it does remind us that it's not as simple as sort of saying, oh, well, we got the 3 points, therefore we're playing well and tick the box and move on. There is still a lot of things to work on. And on a different day, a lot of these games could have gone a different way. We're not comprehensively beating anyone. And as the Huddersfield fixture showed, we're not sort of out of that rut as easily as that. You know, it's not as if we've just sort of rearranged the team and suddenly it's all working well. But yeah, that great save from Baxter. I guess the last sort of touching on the rearranged formation, I thought Christie, we'll talk about the Huddersfield game where it didn't work so well, but in this game, I thought Christie in that more advanced role was really a positive. And you talked about the Coyle ball in for Pelkas before. I thought the fact that Christie was playing that more advanced role gave Coyle that space to play that ball in.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure what Christie has played historically. I'm pretty sure it's just a right back, as opposed to like a right winger, which I think he almost took up a Longman position in that Wigan game, and it served him well. I think he gave Coyle someone to play off, and like Christie ran around Coyle to set up the first goal and provide some space and time. I think he had a good game. Unfortunately, couldn't back it up, but it could have just been a fitness thing. I'm not sure that he played much football before coming to us.
No, because he was at Swansea last season, and then I think he was just basically training on his own as a free agent over the summer. So
so I think it's a time thing as well for him, and putting in performances like he did at Wigan will definitely get him the opportunities. I think he'll most likely start against Brum, but it was the best I think I've seen him play in a long time.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, so MVP votes for this match. Did you want to go first?
I agree with you. I'm gonna agree with Coyle as 3. I think that delivery is almost a surefire thing, but also he was instrumental in kind of clearing the ball at certain points and really getting in front of defenders. Oscar, I might interchange Oscar and Baxter. I'll put Baxter as second and Oscar as third. I think, yes, Oscar with the goal, but that's what he's there for. And it's really good to see him scoring off a set piece. And it was a great header as well.
Great header, yeah.
I don't know if you saw, though, but Keane pulled his own player back.
Oh, really?
So thank you, Keane. And Baxter was, a very strong presence in goal. And it really took a lot from Wigan to get that second goal, which they didn't end up getting.
So my vote's Coyle 3, Oscar 2, Baxter 1. Same as you, just different order for Oscar and Baxter. But yeah, that goal was very reminiscent of Magennis's goals in League One for us. We sort of missed that stronger target man in the box. And speaking of Magennis, just before we move on to the Huddersfield game, I forgot to mention this just before, but what did you make of the exchange between Magennis and Coyle, where we sort of talked about, of course, Keane was going to get a goal, but it seemed almost set up for Magennis to get a red card, since that seems his specialty.
It just seems like he likes a fight.
Yeah,
and I think
white line fever.
I think it might just be the Northern Irish in him. I was very confused as to why he was being as rough as he was. I think that was more rough than he typically is. And maybe he wanted to prove a point, but he didn't. And if anything, he showed him as a thug. And I think a lot of our fans took negatively to it.
I think, I mean, like from what the commentator was saying, I think he and Coyle are pretty good mates. So I think there's definitely also an element that the competitiveness in him, as well as playing people that he knew and wanting to either prove that we were wrong to let him go, or just purely to prove his ability, probably pushed him over the edge in that sense. I didn't hate it as much as some people did. It's who he is. Like, yes, he's not normally that aggressive, but he has had the odd red card in him. He's clearly someone that he sort of throws his weight around to try and fire his side up. But I also completely get why people didn't take too fondly to it. I think he got cheered before the game, and obviously then after that was not as fondly received. But hopefully he and Coyle kissed and made up after the game. I'm sure they'll be fine.
I hope so.
Not such a good result against Huddersfield. We've already started to allude to this a little bit talking through the Wigan game, but I think it was it one change to the Wigan side? So Cynic came in. Oh, sorry, Cynic went out for Longman.
Yeah, I think so.
Um, yeah, and I mean, look, I thought the first 20, 30 minutes we looked pretty good. I thought we were dominant on the ball, confident in our passing, and looking to get forward quite well. And then it was really just that unfortunate own goal that really sort of shook us, I guess. I guess the contentious thing we saw, I don't know if you saw, Mitch got a bit of flack on Twitter, friend of the show, Mitch, for suggesting that Coyle was basically wrong to go for the ball that ended up in the back of his own net. And I tend to agree with him, but I'd be curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, first you said the 20 minutes. I think overall it was a good performance, but a very frustrating one. I remember towards the last kind of 20, 30 minutes, everything we did just like rubbed me the wrong way. And it felt like nothing was working. But the
Yeah.
first half, and I think it's summed up with Longman's miss, was actually a pretty good half. And we looked really good for the first 20 minutes. With Coyle, I'm not sure what he was thinking, but it could have been miscommunication in the box. You can see Baxter dive for it. So I'd assumed he would have called mine. And then not sure. It could have just been the moment, but it wasn't a dangerous cross. It wasn't.
No.
There were no attackers anywhere around. There might have been someone behind Coyle, but he would have had enough time to kind of see what's going on. So it may have just been one of those bad decisions, which
Yeah.
every footballer is prone to making. I think we can't really have it in for him. I mean, he is the
Yeah.
captain.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's tried to clear the ball, and unfortunately, it's a bullet header into the goal. Like, congratulate if he's a striker, that's a great finish. It's basically the exact same goal King scored against us. But
I mean, as you say, I mean, Baxter or Elder, I suppose. I'm trying to think, or maybe Graves or someone behind him who has a better view of how much of a dangerous ball that is, because they'd have a better idea of actually who's attacking it from a Huddersfield perspective. Should be communicating, should be yelling, leave it or mine or whatever, just because Coyle has no idea. So as you say, I mean, it's not entirely his fault. It's the
you
entire
can see
defense, really.
Longman. If you watch it back, you can see Longman at the back post get really frustrated and throw his arms in the air, which makes me think something was called or something wasn't called. Whether it was something that was called and then ignored, or there was no communication, and that causes him to be frustrated. Because if it's just an own goal, there's no reason for him to throw his arms up. So something going on there that we couldn't hear or see. And yeah, I think it's a bit unfair to put it all on Coyle. Unfortunately, at that point, that's when things started taking a bit of a turn in the game.
Yeah, no doubt. And you touched on the Longman miss on halftime as well, but we're going to talk about players being turned on. I think it's a difficult one because I also tweeted out during the game that I think he's had a really terrible start to the season. And I think that's a very valid criticism of him. And I think there's a line to be drawn between saying he's playing poorly, he's out of form, he shouldn't be starting, which I think are all valid comments, and some of the abuse that he was getting in the stands. I mean, there was a chant supposedly of "you're not fit to wear the shirt" with his parents and his brother sitting in the stand with the away fans. And I think his brother actually had to leave to go to the bathroom or something like that, just to kind of get away from the chants. But I think you got to think, like, yes, we're on a terrible run of form. And it goes back to the comments about Tufan as well, and calling him in lazy or unfit. I think there's a line to be drawn between valid criticism of a player's performance and just downright abuse. And I think definitely City fans probably crossed that, or definitely crossed that line on the Sunday night. But putting that aside, that miss from Longman was pretty poor. And what's your sort of take on basically his start to the season and then his performance in this game?
Yeah, I think he had a really good end to last season, and it's a shame to kind of see what's going on. I mean, we really don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but from a pure football performance, and I think you said it to me just before we got on this, he puts the effort in, and there's no denying that he runs hard. We saw he made good runs in the Huddersfield game. I mean, like that one-on-one is a perfect example of him cutting in and
doesn't get
timing.
that chance. Yeah, if he doesn't make the run, he doesn't get that chance. Yeah,
exactly. And he's, at the end of the day, like, he's not a striker. He's a winger, and for a winger, you're not necessarily, like, yes, you're expecting a few goals, and yes, he should have put that away. But I think the abuse that he's getting is not founded. At the end of the day, he's a person, not just a footballer. You don't treat your mates like that. And we're fans, right? We're in the stands. We're not performing week in, week out. We're not putting the work in. I think it's really easy for us to get on the back of him. Yes, he's getting paid for it, but it's not fair. Like I said for Tufan, and yes, if he scores, I think it's a completely different game. If anything, I actually think we go on to win that because it gives us a really good start to the second half and end to the first. But I think it should give him some confidence that he's getting into those positions, and he just needs to work on the finishing, which isn't hard. It comes down to training, and I'd kind of be sad to see him not get any more chances.
Yeah.
That said, I'd probably take him out
Yeah.
from the starting 11 for the next game and put Cynic back in.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I think even his performance aside, I think after that sort of abuse or the chance, I think taking him out of the limelight probably makes sense.
I mean, it could do
Yeah.
both. It could do either, right?
Yeah.
It could make sense, or it could like show that the fans are kind
Yeah.
of winning that argument, and it might give him a reason to be like, "Oh, is this place really for me?" Like at this
Yeah.
point, I wouldn't be surprised if he heads off in January or at the end of the year.
I had that thought, and it was sort of when we were talking in the chat, and it was funny because Mitch tweeted at almost the same time I made a similar comment in the chat about the fact that we've made 16 signings and we're still doing a Longman for Smith substitution late in the game. Not to disparage either player, but more so to say we've brought in all of these players and we're still basically bringing on one player we had last season for another player that we had last season. And granted, we signed Longman permanently in January. But it says a bit for, I guess, the injury situation, but also the transfer approach. When you've got, I can't even remember his name now. We've got the two Chelsea loanees, who's actually both names have now got Vale and Simmons, yeah, who aren't even making the bench. And you think, well, why are they there? It's not as if, like, if we want to say, well, we're bringing Smith on because we have no other attacking options. Vale's an attacking option, so unless he's injured, which I think he did miss a game recently because of an injury, but whether he's still injured, I don't know. But it just feels like it's just such a strange approach to the transfers that we've made. And to follow your point, I do wonder if guys like Smith and Longman will actually end up leaving just because, it's that notion of needing to improve the squad, but at the same time, we're sort of in a catch-22 because the players that we're trying to get to improve the squad aren't playing through injury or form or whatever, but it's just such a weird one.
Yeah, I think if you look at the injuries we've got, I mean, Tete's out. That's a striker for Smith. Sayed Manesh is out. He can play winger. Traore hasn't. I don't even know what's the story with Traore. I think he's meant to be back in December or Jan.
Yeah.
That's 3 attacking players who, if in form, replace Longman and Smith every day of the week. And I feel
Salah
bad
as well.
Sorry?
Salah as well. I think he's back in training now. Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll be good to see. And look, that's why I say I wouldn't be surprised if they jump in Jan. One, like they're putting a shift in. I mean, I'm not going to speak to Smith, but Longman's putting a shift in, being abused by the fans when he's the only, like him and Cynic are interchangeable for that position. Yeah. And it's only the 2 of them. And I think it's going to see players leave. Luckily, we've made signings that make sure that we have some depth in those positions if they're fit. But say the injury crisis continues and Longman goes, then we're in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of bad misses, sort of changing the subject slightly, but speaking of bad misses, Oscar missed a pretty big sitter in the second half himself. So, he's not immune to it either. And as you say, with Tete out injured as well, he's another one where, touching wood, but he basically is our only fit striker, of that in that mold. Like we've got Smith who can come on and play a very different sort of role as a striker, but it was really Oscar and Tete who are those sort of bigger, stronger hold-up men, whereas Smith's sort of that smaller, more agile forward. If anything happens to Oscar, we're stuffed.
Yeah, we're in big trouble. And I mean, it's an unfortunate miss. I think at the stage in the game, I'm not even really sure if it gets us much. I think we
It
had
was like
what,
90th minute, wasn't it? Something like
yeah,
that.
or
Yeah.
like 85th or something. We
Yeah.
had like a couple. I mean, there was 6 minutes of extra time.
Yeah.
So who knows? But given him and the fact that he scored I think 8 for the season already and his top scorer, I think it should have been his ninth. But yeah, look, if hopefully Tete comes back soon, I'm unsure as to what's going on there.
I think he's out for a while. I think I have a feeling I saw something that he was out till January, but I could have imagined that it was definitely pretty bad though.
It seems like we'll have a completely different side, different attacking side come the second half of this season, which I can't tell if is a good or bad thing.
Yeah. It's just going to be weird because I don't even know what that does for our January transfer plans because you can't even say, well, we need to improve here or improve there because we don't know with half these players.
I think we can definitely say we need to improve our defense.
Yeah, well speaking of, my last point on the game was just the amount of grappling and basically fouling we were doing in the box that thankfully was not being awarded as penalties. But it just worries me that it seems as if Greaves and Jones, both as culprits of this, over a number of games now, the amount of, and I think in this case, the one that sticks in mind is actually Doherty as well. The amount of, I think he just basically tries to haul Rhodes over while he's bursting into the box to take a shot. Where I just feel like we're just panicking. We just don't know how to defend, where we're not able to stop the opposition. And so we're just trying to basically do whatever we can to stop them getting a shot away. And it just feels like, I think Graves spoke about it during the week as well, just the amount of goals. We're conceding something like 2 goals a game, which is the worst in the league. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. My red flag before the season started was if we started conceding a whole bunch of goals, because we were good last season because of how few goals we conceded. But now we're conceding 2 goals a game. We're not going to be scoring 3 goals a game to win these games, as much as Ajun wants us to.
Yeah, I mean, we're averaging a goal a game and we're conceding 2. And
Yeah.
there are only 2 teams in the league that have conceded over 20 goals, and it's us and Bristol. And we've conceded 26 goals, and I have a feeling most of them would have been from set pieces. Like the Huddersfield game, and I mentioned it a little bit in the Wigan recap, is that we just don't look confident defending a set piece. It's almost as if the defenders think this is going to go in or something is going to go wrong. The second goal should have been cleared multiple times. And we're just stood around watching. Christie doesn't make an effort, just kind of runs at the defender and turns away. It's just not good enough. And where you've left Coyle against someone like Hellick, who's probably like 2 heads taller than him, it's not the right defending. And I'm concerned every time we concede a corner that there's about to be a goal. And I think all of that can be worked on in training. And I think that might have been a potential disagreement between Ashun and Shotta, because I think Shotta wanted to play attacking football. I think even Ashun came out and said, we just can't defend. Or if you asked our players to park the bus and just defend, they couldn't. And I'm hoping that either Dawson or whoever decides to say they're not going to be a manager and then come in and be the manager makes a change in our defense.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that manager hunt in a second. I'll give my votes and then get yours for this game. We'll move on to that. I really struggled to give votes for this one, so I basically went off individual actions that stood out for me in the game, and I think so. I gave 3 votes to Greaves for that last-ditch tackle towards the end of the game. Already 2-0 at that point. Not going to change the result, but that's the sort of thing we saw from him a whole lot more last season and the season before, those sorts of great, well-timed tackles to win the ball back. So that was really positive. And he's been struggling for form the last month or so, which has coincided with our losing run. So it'd be good to see if he can get back into a bit of form himself. 2 votes for Doherty. I thought, again, he was really good when he came on, really deserving of a start against Birmingham, which he'll now get with Slater's suspension. So we'll see how he goes in that one. And then I gave 1 vote to Longman. I think partly sympathetic, partly, as we sort of said, like the run to get into that position, to have that chance in the first half. If he puts that away, we're saying that's a brilliant goal, great effort to get in that position and to score it. And yes, okay, he's missed it. So, he's only getting 1 vote, not getting 3 votes. But the effort that he put in and the abuse that he copped was just really misaligned to me.
Yeah, I agree. For that last ditch effort, it was Jones that cleared it off the line. So I'm tempted to interchange Greaves with Jones. I give Doherty 2. And then I've given Seri 1
Oh yeah, good shout.
because minus his constant playing on the edge of our 18-yard box, he always brings some creativity, and I felt he consistently tried to play the ball forward. I mean, he was instrumental in passing it, I think, through to Doherty, who then rebounded to Oscar for the miss. And whenever Seri had it, it just seemed like we were going to do something. And I mean, when we get into the Birmingham preview, I think I definitely put Seri in the 11. But yeah, Seri gets my 1.
Fair enough. Yeah, so then the manager. So obviously the news that Shotto had been sacked 8 hours before the Luton game gave Dawson that fixture, and then he also got the midweek game against Wigan. But when we recorded our last episode, we were expecting that the manager would basically be appointed shortly after the Wigan game to be in charge for Huddersfield. And I suspect, well, that was clearly the plan with Martins in the stand with Ajun for the Wigan game. We won the game. You think, I think I said it in the chat, as a manager, surely if you're going to enter negotiations to take over at a club, you ask probably 3 main questions. You ask, how much you're going to pay me? Can I bring my staff with me? And what's my, what was it? Oh, how long's the contract? Probably the 3 things that you'd ask before you even sort of entertain it as a serious offer. Clearly, Ajun has said the right things to Martins by that point, presuming those are the questions he's asked. And he's come across, got his photos taken, watched the game, and then something's happened to break down negotiations. And I just think, granted, there is now the news today that I think he might be interested in the Wolves job. So maybe that sort of tempted him away. But you have to wonder, like as you were saying earlier in the episode, you have to wonder, to be so publicly courted by City, to be photographed with City, only for it to break down, it just comes across really weird episode.
Yeah, it does. And whether it's a publicity stunt from Martins to get his name out there and get picked up by another club, who knows? I'm not going to say that was his intention, but it may have worked.
That's a good idea.
I just don't know what's happening. And I think no matter how many articles we read or how many Twitter posts we read from Baz or whoever it is, we just don't know. And I think hopefully we know soon. And I think the post from Ashton saying, it's a long-term play and we believe in Dawson. As much as I love Dawson and look, he's a club legend, I just don't. And I think I said this to you as well. He's not the person that's potentially going to get us to the playoff places. He's an interim manager that will hopefully stabilize where we're at. But I just want to see some concrete news about someone being interested. I think you said Carvajal might be re-emerging. Not sure what the news is around that. But I'm personally not trying to buy into any of the rumors. I think I said this with our our August transfers, is that when it happens, it happens. I'm not wasting energy trying to predict who the next manager is because you just lose out on the information each day. Everything changes too quick.
Yeah, and probably the strangest or the most interesting element of it is that after those initial sort of that rush of information about Carvajal and Martins and a few other names, and then closing in on Martins and then him saying no, it's all gone quite quiet. So I wonder if that's Ajun sort of saying, right, well, I've got to do this sort of a bit quieter now behind the scenes. I don't want to kind of have egg on my face again that someone else has turned me down. So he's doing a bit more subtly this time, but it does seem to have gone quite quiet, which no doubt means, Dawson will 99% be in charge for the Birmingham game, so we just have to focus on him. But as you say, it's that uncertainty and not knowing. I think I said last week, it feels like this is the first time since Bruce walked away where we didn't really have a manager in place or know who our manager was going to be, because Silva was basically, Phelan was sacked and Silva came in within days. When Silva left, granted, there was a little bit of uncertainty, but there was no games. And then we got Slutsky in, and then Slutsky was Adkins quite quickly, and then Adkins left. And, it was all, there was no sort of period of league fixtures where we just basically didn't know what was going to happen or what the plan was. So this is the first time basically since Phelan was caretaker before he was made permanent that we just have no idea of what's going to happen.
But is it a theme in the championship at the moment? I mean, Bruce was sacked as well, and I'm not sure if they have a replacement or if they've
Yeah.
already made theirs.
Yeah. So what? So Middlesbrough were first linked to Edwards and I forget who the other one was that they were linked to. I think it was Edwards and I can't remember now. But now they're looking at Carrick. And as you said, maybe it is a thing. Maybe it's. I mean, 9 managerial sackings in the championship, and we're not even at Christmas is crazy. Like last year, I think the 8th manager sacked in the championship was McCann, and he was sacked sort of end of January. So
Yeah.
it almost feels like there's a lot of teams down the bottom that have very ambitious owners, Middlesbrough, West Brom, and ourselves, amongst others, who are basically reacting to other clubs making moves and saying, well, we need to make a move as well.
Yeah, but it seems like the moves are being made without the thought of, all right,
Yeah.
who's going to win? And like it's fine to make a change, but just have something planned. And it seems like we're doing the planning after we've made the change. So I'm not gonna say we should have kept Shota around for a while, but we could have kept him around until we had someone in place.
Which is why I just find it so strange that he was sacked at the end of an international break, where you think that's a perfect 2-week window to sack him at the start of the window, at the start of the break, find your manager, court your manager over the next sort of 6 or 7 days, get him in place, and then he has a week to prepare for the next fixture. So, yeah, that's a weird one. But I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on then. We'll do our Who Am I game, and then we'll preview the Birmingham fixture. You've done one of these before, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's
Mine
see how
was
you go.
last time.
What's that?
I think mine was Clucas last time.
Oh yeah. Last week Dan got El Mohammadi, and it was the first time we've had a correct guess after just the first clue, because he has like 190 appearances or something. So it was like, it's
I'm not hopeful.
basically good.
I'm not hopeful.
We'll see. So the first clue is I made 114 league appearances for City, scoring 10 goals.
It's a lot of appearances.
So I'd say that's, what would you say, probably 3 or 4 years worth of appearances.
Yeah. Quinn?
Not a bad guess. It's not Quinn, but not a bad guess. Right error. That's a hint. I first joined City on loan in 2011 before returning on loan in 2012, and then finally signed permanently in 2013. I departed City in 2015, signing for Norwich.
Brady?
Yeah. Wow, very certain. And yes, it was Brady. What, just the Norwich clue?
No, it was
just the multiple loans.
Yeah.
I thought Chester was the other one that it could have. I think Chester had multiple loans as well, so that's why. And
he scored 10.
Sorry. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
True. Nah, good shout. Yeah, Brady. Nice and snappy on that one.
He was
cool. Okay.
Went out from United, right?
Yeah. Well, it was what, Chester, Brady, Dudgeon, and it was Cameron Stewart were all loaned in from United, and then most of those turned out all right. Well, half of those turned out all right. Cool. Okay. Well, so just before we preview the Birmingham game, everyone listening or watching along, always appreciate the views and the support. If you haven't already, if you could hit like on the video, subscribe to the channel as well. We're really close to 150 subscribers as well, so that would be awesome to hit that number. And then just leave your comments as well on what you thought of these fixtures. Always appreciate the feedback. Cool. Okay. Well, so the Birmingham fixture. So we've got them this weekend. I think our next game's next Thursday, so we'll get another episode done before that game. But they're managed by John Eustace, who took over in the summer. It's a bit of a weird situation because I think he took over and then almost immediately there was talk of a takeover, and they said if they do, well, when they finalize that takeover, he'd probably make way. So he was almost, I think it was at one point he was almost sacked before he'd even taken charge of a game. But he's doing a reasonable job with them. I think they've got something like, where is it? 2 wins in their last 5, but they're sort of mid-table when everyone was sort of expecting them to be sort of rooted to the bottom of the table, given the state of the club at the moment. But Yeah, they seem to be traveling pretty well. They've signed, talking about United, they signed Chong from United, who was on loan there last season. Seemed a pretty decent signing for them, and he's sort of, I mean, a mainstay in their side at the moment, and really a contributing factor to their form. Um, it's an interesting game. I sort of view it in the same bracket as those Wigan and Huddersfield games, where it's not a must win, but I mean, most games are becoming must win to an extent at the moment, just to sort of start moving up the table. But how do you sort of view this game and our chances?
I think it's a pretty big game,
Mm,
and it's one of those. I am always going to call it a 6-pointer. Like, they're only 2 points ahead of
mm,
us at the moment, and they're probably a team that we're going to be in and around the rest of the season. You say Chong, he got 2 assists in their last game, which was a
yeah,
3-0 win, which is pretty decent. I think he's also pretty young, so still a long career ahead for him. I mean, they beat Bristol, who are the second most, like, who's the team that's conceded the second most amount of goals. So if that's anything to go by, I'm a little bit worried. I'm not sure if we're at home or away. I think we might be away.
yeah, I think we might be. I think we might be. I'll have a look.
No, we're at home.
Um,
We're at home.
right.
Um,
Yeah,
so
Monday morning as well. It's a pretty
yeah, terrible
disgusting
time.
time slot.
Terrible time. I'm oddly confident, but knowing me, we're going to lose. So everyone can put your money on that. Um, I'm I'm wanting to make some changes. I think I would put Seri in for Tufan.
Yeah,
And I mean, Doherty has to start for Slater. I was kind of surprised by Woods as well when he came on. I mean, the triple sub didn't work, but I think it gave those three players a run out and to just kind of see what they are. And I think Woods was almost Doherty esque. He was consistently running from defense forward and trying to get the ball. Um, and I think I'd put Cynic back in,
yeah,
or I'd put Longman on the right and Cynic on the left and have
and then
Oscar up front. So take Christie off.
yeah,
He seemed a bit tired. Like in the Huddersfield game for that first goal, he gets a toe in, but then stops running when he loses it, and
yeah.
doesn't
I
try.
mean, yeah,
I think he
I mean
just
that
needs.
first goal was basically Christie.
Yeah, I think he just needs a rest. That's all.
Yeah,
And I think Longman has a point to prove. So even
yeah,
if you just make that switch, but I think Cynic is really crucial. I think we saw it in the first half in the Wigan game. He's got a good cross on him, and I think we need to give Oscar the service that he needs. So
and
I reckon we win. I still think we concede. I don't think we keep a clean sheet, but I think we win.
because I guess yeah, it's a tough one. I think I'd be confident that we can get the win at home. I think Dawson has them set up pretty well, and really you look at the Huddersfield result and even Luton, both other fixtures that we've lost under Dawson, where you can make a case for us being really unlucky to lose the games in the manner we did. Where you look at well, I mean both Luton and Huddersfield, those own goals. The Luton one probably a bit more unfortunate than the Huddersfield one. But both games that we could have had a chance in, Slater having the big chance against Luton, the big chance for Longman and Oscar against Huddersfield. I don't think we're playing as badly. Ironically, we're not playing as badly as the results suggest, whereas it was probably the opposite early in the season under Shotter. So I do give us a decent chance in this. Birmingham aren't in amazing form over the set. Well, I did just say that they're in decent form, but they 2 wins in 5 means that they're gettable. And I think they haven't won in 6 against us. You do mention there, though, of course, the fact that you're previewing this episode means that we probably won't win. I will point out, though, I mean, if you look back over your record on the podcast, the first 2 were the most disastrous because, of course, you previewed the infamous 8-0 loss to Wigan, and then the 4-1 loss to Fleetwood as our first loss in League One. But since then, I mean, we have actually had you on to preview a Birmingham game previously, which ended up 0-0. And then most recently, we had Bristol City last season, which was also 0-0. So your last 2 episodes have been followed by a 0-0. And because I don't think we're going to keep a clean sheet in this one, I could see a 2-1 win. Hopefully, would be nice.
Yeah, I hope so, and I think Oscar will be on form. I think Oscar will
Yeah,
drive a goal. It's an important next 2 games for us. And I know we're not previewing Blackpool, but Blackpool are right above us. They're a point ahead. A win against Birmingham really takes us into good stead to that Blackpool game.
Yeah, and I said to Dan last week that my line was probably 2 points out of Wigan and Huddersfield. Like if we got 2 draws, I'd be okay with that. A win would be great. Anything less than 2 points would be disastrous.
Yeah.
And we got the 3 points, so that was great. I'd probably say similarly. I know, as you say, we're not previewing the Blackpool game, but similarly over the next two, I'd probably put the line at 2 or 3 points again. I think probably 3 points. I think if we can get 3 points, that's a good start. It's a good recovery. Anything less, we're starting to just bleed too many points. And, no one's saying it yet, but we are kind of creeping towards a relegation battle if we're not careful. I mean, I think the funny thing is that when you sort of say who at the moment is looking most likely to go down, and granted, it's still very early in the season, but you look at the sides around us, it's like West Brom and Middlesbrough and sides like that who you sort of automatically think, well, they're not going to finish down there. Yeah. But the sides that are sort of assumed to go down, like Reading and Birmingham themselves, are actually performing reasonably well. So, yeah, it's a tricky one. And
it is still early on. Like if we're looking at points, we're 3 points above relegation, but we're also 3 points from 12th. So, I mean, disregarding goal difference, it's still very close. And a few good results builds that confidence. It gets us going. And the day we keep a clean sheet will be really good for us as well.
Yeah. I think back-to-back wins is the important thing, because you look at that Wigan result and you think, okay, that's like a good step in the right direction. But then we follow that up with a loss to Huddersfield, who are below us, and it just sort of undoes all the good work to an extent.
Yeah.
So I really think, a win against Birmingham is really vital. And I worry about what will happen. Not what will happen, but I worry if we lose the Birmingham game, where that puts us, what it does to. I mean, the fan base is starting to get a bit uneasy about the Martins U-turn, the manner of results, the way Shotter was sacked. You don't want things to get ugly in the stadium. And with all of the positive stuff that Ajun's doing, you don't want him to be put offside by the supporters. But it does feel like there's a bit of uneasiness starting to creep in.
Which goes away with a result.
Yeah, exactly. So, so hopefully we can get the win in this one. But we'll be back next week to cover that result and look ahead to our next fixtures. But until then, thanks for joining me, Mike.
No worries.
And thanks everyone for listening in. Until next time, come on, City.